Hello, my name is Kimberley, and 3 years ago, I walked into what I thought would be a routine doctor's appointment. Instead, I walked into a nightmare that would change my life, and eventually, the lives of countless other women. What started as crushing chest pains and dizzy spells that doctors dismissed as anxiety because of my age became a medical mystery that nearly killed me. But here's the twist. When I finally got the truth, I didn't just get justice for myself. I uncovered a pattern so disturbing that it sent shockwaves through our entire medical community. Some people call what I did next revenge. I call it justice. And today, I'm going to tell you exactly how one 28-year-old woman took down a doctor who thought he was untouchable, and why what happened next will make you question everything you think you know about trusting medical professionals. Before we embark on this incredible journey together, I have a small, heartfelt favor to ask. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up. It costs you nothing but means the world to me. And let me know in the comments which beautiful corner of the world you're watching from. Your support truly makes all the difference. You know that feeling when something's seriously wrong with your body, but everyone around you acts like you're imagining things? That was my reality for 8 terrifying months. It started on a Tuesday morning in March 2022. I was getting ready for work at my marketing firm in downtown Phoenix when this crushing pain hit my chest like a freight train. Not a sharp pain, more like someone had wrapped a steel band around my ribs and was slowly tightening it. My left arm went numb, and the room started spinning so violently I had to grab the bathroom counter to keep from falling. My roommate Jessica found me there 20 minutes later, pale as a sheet and struggling to breathe. "Kim, you look terrible," she said, her voice laced with worry. "We're going to the ER right now." But here's where things get interesting. The emergency room doctor, a guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, took one look at my age on the chart and immediately dismissed my symptoms. 28 years old, no family history of heart disease, he mumbled, not even making eye contact. "You're probably just stressed. Have you been having anxiety lately?" I wanted to scream. This wasn't anxiety. I'd had panic attacks before. This was something entirely different. But he prescribed me some Xanax and sent me home with instructions to get more sleep and reduce stress. That was my first red flag, but I was young and naive enough to trust that doctors always knew best. The symptoms didn't go away. They got worse. Over the next 2 months, I visited 3 different doctors, and each one gave me the same dismissive treatment. Dr. Patricia Hendricks at the family clinic told me I was overthinking things. Dr. Mark Stevens at the urgent care center suggested I try yoga and meditation. It was infuriating, but what really broke my heart was how they made me feel like I was losing my mind. The breaking point came when I met Dr. Richard Carlisle at Phoenix General Hospital. This man would become the center of my story, though I didn't know it yet. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and an air of superiority that filled the room like expensive cologne. He walked in while I was explaining my symptoms to the nurse, and I could see him roll his eyes before he even looked at my chart. "Let me guess," he said, settling into his chair with theatrical resignation. "Chest pain, dizziness, fatigue. You're young, probably work too much, drink too much coffee, and spend too much time on social media reading about diseases you think you have." I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. "Doctor, I know my body. Something is seriously wrong." He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "Miss Patterson, I've been practicing medicine for 25 years. I've seen thousands of young women come through these doors with the exact same complaints. You know what they all had in common? Stress and anxiety. That's it." But I pressed on, describing how the episodes were getting more frequent and more intense, how I'd collapsed at work the previous week and had to be carried to the break room, how I was afraid to drive because the dizziness came without warning. Dr. Carlisle sighed dramatically. "Look, I understand you're concerned, but you're a healthy young woman. Your heart is fine. Your lungs are fine. What you need is to address your mental health, not chase after imaginary physical problems." That word, imaginary, hit me like a slap. This man was supposed to help me, supposed to listen to me, and instead he was treating me like a hysterical child. But what he said next would haunt me for months. "I'm going to prescribe you an anti-anxiety medication, and I want you to see a psychiatrist. And please," he added, standing up to leave, "don't come back here unless you're actually dying. We have real patients to treat. Real patients." As if I wasn't real. As if my pain didn't matter because of the number on my birth certificate. I left that appointment feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. But I also left with something else, a burning determination to prove him wrong. I just had no idea how dark this rabbit hole was about to get, or how many other women Dr. Carlisle had dismissed with those same cruel words. The next few months were a blur of sleepless nights and desperate internet searches. I documented everything, every symptom, every episode, every dismissive comment from medical professionals. My girlfriend Amanda, who worked as a nurse practitioner in Tucson, became my lifeline during this period. "Kim, something's not adding up here," she told me during one of our late-night phone calls. "The symptoms you're describing, they don't sound like anxiety to me. Have you considered seeing a cardiologist?" The problem was, I needed a referral, and every primary care doctor I'd seen refused to give me one. They all echoed Dr. Carlisle's assessment. Young woman, probably stressed, definitely overthinking things. It was like being trapped in a medical version of Groundhog Day. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday in August, and I was having dinner with my parents at their favorite Italian place in Scottsdale. We were celebrating my mom's birthday when the worst episode yet hit me like a tsunami. The chest pain was so intense I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but grip the edge of the table and pray it would pass. My dad, a former EMT, took one look at me and called 911. "This isn't anxiety," he said firmly as we waited for the ambulance. "I've seen panic attacks, honey. This is something else." At the hospital, I was seen by Dr. Jennifer Liu, a young resident who actually listened to me. She ran an EKG, ordered blood work, and when the tests came back, her face went pale. "Miss Patterson," she said quietly, "your troponin levels are elevated. That indicates heart muscle damage. I need to call cardiology right away." Finally, someone was taking me seriously. But when the on-call cardiologist arrived, my heart sank. It was Dr. Carlisle. He looked annoyed to see me again. "Dr. Liu, this patient has been here multiple times with anxiety-related complaints. I've already evaluated her thoroughly." "But sir, her troponin levels are probably elevated due to stress," he interrupted. "Young women often have false positives on cardiac markers. I'm not wasting the department's time and resources on unnecessary tests." Dr. Liu looked confused and frustrated, but she was just a resident. Dr. Carlisle outranked her, and his word was final. I was sent home again, this time with a stronger anti-anxiety medication and a note in my chart that would follow me to every future appointment. Patient exhibits drug-seeking behavior and health anxiety. Recommend psychiatric evaluation. That note would become my scarlet letter. Every doctor who saw it immediately changed their attitude toward me. I went from being a patient to being a problem, from someone seeking help to someone seeking attention. But I refused to give up. Over the next month, I saw 2 more cardiologists, both of whom read Dr. Carlisle's notes and dismissed me before I could even finish explaining my symptoms. The medical community in Phoenix felt like a closed circle, and I was definitely on the outside. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. If the doctors in Phoenix wouldn't listen to me, I'd find ones who would. I started researching medical centers in other cities, looking for specialists who might see past my age and gender to the real problem underneath. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. My cousin Rachel, who lived in San Francisco, connected me with Dr. Sarah Ewan at UCSF Medical Center. Dr. Ewan specialized in cardiac conditions in young women, a field that was apparently much more complex than anyone in Phoenix seemed to realize. "I'd like to see you as soon as possible," Dr. Ewan told me during our phone consultation. "The symptoms you're describing, combined with your age and the pattern of episodes, are concerning. Can you fly out here next week?" For the first time in months, I felt hope. I booked a flight to San Francisco, took time off work, and prepared myself for what I hoped would finally be some answers. Dr. Ewan was everything the doctors in Phoenix weren't. She was thorough, compassionate, and most importantly, she believed me. She spent 2 hours reviewing my symptom diary, asking detailed questions about each episode, and explaining the various conditions that could cause my symptoms in someone my age. "There's a condition called spontaneous coronary artery dissection," she explained. "It primarily affects young, healthy women, and it's often misdiagnosed as anxiety because the symptoms can be intermittent and the standard tests don't always catch it." She ordered a series of tests I'd never heard of: a cardiac MRI, a coronary angiogram, and something called a fractional flow reserve test. For the first time in almost a year, I felt like someone was actually trying to solve the puzzle of my illness instead of just dismissing it. The results were shocking. The MRI showed evidence of a previous heart attack, one so small and atypical that it hadn't been detected by the basic tests I'd received in Phoenix. The angiogram revealed scarring in one of my coronary arteries, consistent with spontaneous dissection. "Miss Patterson," Dr. Ewan said gently as we reviewed the images, "you've been having heart attacks, small ones, but real nonetheless. If we hadn't caught this, you could have had a massive coronary event that could have killed you." I sat in stunned silence, processing this information. All those months of being told I was imagining things, all those dismissive comments about anxiety and stress, all those times I'd questioned my own sanity, and I'd been right all along. My heart was literally breaking, and no one had bothered to look. But along with the relief of finally having answers came a burning rage. How many appointments had I sat through where doctors looked at me like I was wasting their time? How many times had I been made to feel like a hypochondriac or attention seeker? And most importantly, how many other women were out there right now experiencing the same dismissive treatment I'd endured? Dr. Ewan started me on medication to prevent future dissections and scheduled regular follow-ups. But as I flew back to Phoenix with my medical records and a clear diagnosis, I knew my fight was just beginning. It was time to hold Dr. Carlisle accountable for nearly letting me die. Armed with my diagnosis and Dr. Ewan's detailed report, I returned to Phoenix with a new mission. I wasn't just seeking validation anymore, I was seeking justice. But I quickly learned that filing a complaint against a doctor isn't as straightforward as you might think. My first stop was the Arizona Medical Board. I spent hours crafting a detailed complaint, outlining every interaction I'd had with Dr. Carlisle, including direct quotes I'd written down after each appointment. I attached Dr. Ewan's findings, my medical records, and a timeline showing how his dismissive treatment had delayed my diagnosis by nearly a year. The response I got was disappointingly bureaucratic. "Thank you for your complaint. Please be aware that the investigation process can take 6 to 12 months, and we cannot discuss the details or outcome with you due to confidentiality regulations." 6 to 12 months. How many women would Dr. Carlisle dismiss in that time? How many would suffer the same fate I had or worse? That's when I decided to get creative. I started researching Dr. Carlisle more thoroughly, digging into his background and looking for any patterns of similar behavior. What I found made my blood run cold. Through online review sites and patient forums, I discovered that my experience wasn't unique. Dozens of women had left reviews describing encounters with Dr. Carlisle that sounded eerily familiar to mine. Young women with chest pain dismissed as anxiety. Middle-aged women with concerning symptoms told they were probably menopausal. Even elderly women whose families felt their concerns weren't being taken seriously. The most heartbreaking was a review from someone named Sarah M. 2019, who wrote, "Dr. Carlisle dismissed my 23-year-old daughter's chest pains as stress from her new job. She died of a heart attack 3 months later. I will never forgive myself for not getting a second opinion sooner." I stared at that review for a long time, feeling sick to my stomach. This wasn't just about medical malpractice. This was about systemic dismissal of women's health concerns, and Dr. Carlisle appeared to be one of the worst offenders. I reached out to Sarah through the review platform, and we had a heartbreaking phone conversation. Her daughter Emma had died of a rare genetic condition that could have been detected with proper testing. Like me, Emma had been told her symptoms were psychological. "I've tried to file complaints," Sarah told me through tears, "but his colleagues always close ranks. They say there's no way to prove he should have known to test for something so rare." That conversation lit a fire in me. I realized that individual complaints weren't going to be enough. What we needed was to show a pattern, a systematic bias that was literally costing women their lives. I started reaching out to other women who had left negative reviews about Dr. Carlisle. Some were hesitant to talk, afraid of legal retaliation. Others had given up on getting justice, but a few were willing to share their stories, and what emerged was a clear picture of discriminatory medical practice. What started as my personal quest for accountability began to transform into something much larger. I connected with Maria Rodriguez, whose endometriosis had been dismissed as normal period pain for 2 years, and Jennifer Walsh, whose autoimmune condition had been attributed to working mom stress. Together, we formed an unlikely sisterhood of medical survivors. "We need to document everything," Maria suggested during one of our coffee meetings. "Every interaction, every dismissive comment, every time our concerns were minimized. If we can establish a pattern, maybe we can prevent this from happening to other women." We created a shared document where we each detailed our experiences with Dr. Carlisle and other doctors at Phoenix General. The patterns that emerged were stunning and deeply disturbing. Women's symptoms were consistently attributed to psychological causes, while men with similar complaints received thorough workups. Young women were especially likely to be dismissed, regardless of the severity of their symptoms. But we needed more than anecdotal evidence. That's when Jennifer, who worked in data analysis, had a brilliant idea. What if we could access hospital records, not individual patient files, but statistical data about diagnostic patterns, testing rates, and outcomes? Through a series of Freedom of Information Act requests and public records searches, we began to piece together a disturbing picture of healthcare disparities at Phoenix General. Women under 30 were 40% less likely to receive cardiac testing than men of the same age, even when presenting with identical symptoms. The average number of appointments before receiving a correct diagnosis was twice as high for women as for men. Armed with this data, I contacted a local investigative journalist named Marcus Thompson, who had written extensively about healthcare issues. Marcus was initially skeptical. Hospital expo stories were tricky, and doctors had powerful legal teams. But when I showed him our documentation and the statistical evidence we'd gathered, his tune changed quickly. "This is bigger than just one bad doctor," he told me during our first meeting. "This looks like institutional bias. Are you prepared for what comes next? Because once this story breaks, there's going to be pushback." I was ready, more than ready. But what happened next surprised even me. Marcus's investigation uncovered something we hadn't expected. Dr. Carlisle wasn't just dismissive. He was also involved in a network of doctors who routinely prescribed unnecessary psychiatric medications to women whose physical symptoms they couldn't or wouldn't diagnose. These prescriptions generated significant revenue for the hospital's psychiatric department, creating a financial incentive to misdiagnose women with mental health conditions. The web of corruption ran deeper than any of us had imagined. What had started as one woman's fight for medical justice was becoming an exposé of systematic healthcare fraud that affected hundreds, possibly thousands of women. As Marcus prepared his article for publication, I knew that Dr. Carlisle's comfortable world was about to come crashing down. But I also knew that he wouldn't go down without a fight, and that fight was about to get very personal. The article hit like a bomb. Phoenix Hospital under fire for systematic dismissal of women's health concerns ran on the front page of the Arizona Republic, with my story as the centerpiece. Within hours, the hospital's phone lines were flooded with calls from women sharing similar experiences. Dr. Carlisle's response was swift and vicious. 2 days after the article published, I received a cease and desist letter from his attorney, claiming I had defamed his character and demanding I publicly retract my statements. The letter threatened to sue me for damages to his reputation and medical practice. "They're trying to intimidate you," my lawyer Rebecca Chen explained during our emergency meeting. "But everything you said is documented and true. They don't have a case and they know it." Still, the legal pressure was terrifying. Dr. Carlisle had resources I couldn't match, and the stress of potentially facing a lawsuit was overwhelming. But something unexpected happened that changed everything. Other women started coming forward publicly. The day after the cease and desist letter arrived, Sarah, Emma's mother, held a press conference. Standing in front of Phoenix General Hospital, she held up a photo of her daughter and spoke directly to the cameras. "My daughter Emma would be alive today if Dr. Carlisle had taken her seriously," she said, her voice steady but filled with pain. "No other family should have to go through what we've endured. These doctors need to be held accountable." Within a week, 17 more women had filed formal complaints with the medical board. 3 had retained lawyers and were pursuing malpractice suits. The hospital administration, which had initially stood behind Dr. Carlisle, suddenly found themselves dealing with a PR nightmare and potential legal liability. But Dr. Carlisle wasn't finished fighting. In a desperate move, he contacted several of his former patients, women who'd had positive experiences with him, and asked them to write letters to the medical board defending his character. Some did, creating a counter-narrative that portrayed him as a caring physician who was being unfairly persecuted. The medical board investigation, which had been moving at a snail's pace, suddenly accelerated. They interviewed dozens of patients, reviewed hundreds of medical records, and brought in outside experts to evaluate diagnostic patterns. Meanwhile, the hospital conducted its own internal investigation. What they found was damning. A review of Dr. Carlisle's cases over the past 5 years revealed that women were significantly more likely to be discharged from his care without definitive diagnoses, and more likely to return multiple times with the same complaints before receiving appropriate treatment. The breaking point came when the hospital's insurance company got involved. Facing multiple malpractice suits and the possibility of many more, they pressured the hospital administration to take decisive action. On a cold Tuesday morning in February, Dr. Carlisle was called into the Chief of Staff's office and suspended pending the outcome of the medical board's investigation. By that afternoon, word had leaked to the media, and the story exploded across social media platforms. The medical board's final report was released 6 months later, and it vindicated everything we had fought for. Dr. Carlisle was found guilty of providing substandard care to multiple patients, showing bias in his diagnostic approach, and failing to meet the standard of care expected of a physician. His medical license was suspended for 2 years, and he was required to complete extensive training on gender bias in medicine before being eligible for reinstatement. The hospital implemented new protocols for diagnostic workups, requiring second opinions for any case where symptoms were attributed solely to psychological causes. But the real victory came in the form of systemic change. The Arizona Medical Board, facing public pressure and media scrutiny, announced new guidelines for investigating complaints related to diagnostic bias. They also established a patient advocate program to help people navigate the complaint process. The story had a ripple effect far beyond Arizona. Medical schools began incorporating training on gender bias into their curricula. Professional medical organizations issued statements acknowledging the problem of women's symptoms being dismissed or minimized. However, the outcome wasn't the perfect Hollywood ending you might expect. Dr. Carlisle, facing financial ruin from legal fees and loss of income, filed for bankruptcy. His wife left him, and his adult children distanced themselves from the scandal. While I felt he deserved consequences for his actions, I couldn't help but feel some sympathy for his family, who were innocent victims of his professional misconduct. The personal cost for me was significant too. The stress of the legal battle and media attention had taken a toll on my health and relationships. Some of my friendships couldn't survive the intensity of the fight, and dating became complicated when potential partners Googled my name and found pages of news articles. But there were unexpected positives as well. I received hundreds of messages from women around the country sharing their own stories of medical dismissal. Many said that reading about my experience had given them the courage to seek second opinions or advocate more aggressively for their health. I also formed lasting friendships with Mariah, Jennifer, and the other women who had joined our fight. We called ourselves the Phoenix Rising Group, a name that felt appropriate given what we'd survived and accomplished. 2 years later, I received a call that brought everything full circle. Dr. Jennifer Liu, the resident who had first taken my symptoms seriously, had completed her residency and was starting a practice focused on women's cardiology. She wanted to hire me as a patient advocate, helping other women navigate the healthcare system and avoid the pitfalls I'd encountered. "Your story inspired me to specialize in this area," she told me. "There are so many women out there who need someone in their corner, someone who understands what they're going through." It was the perfect way to transform my painful experience into something positive and meaningful. Today, 3 years after that first dismissive appointment with Dr. Carlisle, I work as a patient advocate specializing in women's health issues. I've helped dozens of women get the medical care they deserved, and I've seen the healthcare system slowly, very slowly, begin to acknowledge and address its gender bias problem. Dr. Carlisle completed his required training and had his license reinstated last year. He now practices family medicine in a small town outside Phoenix, and by all accounts, his approach to patient care has dramatically improved. Sometimes I wonder if our confrontation ultimately made him a better doctor, though I'll never know for sure. The women's health advocacy group we started has grown into a nonprofit organization with chapters in 12 states. We provide resources for patients, training for healthcare providers, and support for anyone fighting for appropriate medical care. As for me, my heart condition is well managed with medication, and I haven't had a cardiac event in over 2 years. Dr. Ewan continues to monitor my care, and I've become something of a case study in her research on spontaneous coronary artery dissection in young women. The scars from this experience, both physical and emotional, will always be with me. But I've learned that sometimes the most difficult battles lead to the most meaningful victories. Every woman who receives appropriate cardiac testing because of the protocols we helped establish, every medical student who learns about gender bias because of the changes we fought for, every patient who feels empowered to advocate for themselves because of our story, they make all the pain worthwhile. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: trust your instincts about your own body. You know yourself better than any doctor ever will, regardless of their credentials or experience. Don't let anyone dismiss your symptoms or make you feel like you're imagining things. Keep fighting, keep advocating for yourself, and never give up until you get the answers you deserve.